I'm going to talk about loneliness. People often say they are lonely. Older people, especially when the children are married, they are facing the empty nest syndrome. Or an older couple, they have lost one of them has gone, and they just find that all their life's purpose, they have worked so hard all their lives, and they don't have anything more to achieve or to give to the world, and they start feeling lonely. But then I have a question. Don't young people also feel lonely? I think young people are terribly lonely. Quite contrary to what we see about them. They all look so jolly and loud voiced and all the time being very playful and whatnot. But I just think that loneliness of an older person is perhaps justified, because he has lived his life and he has had his thing. I mean, justified to some extent, not fully, but I mean, but the younger people being lonely, I think that they have not really come to grips with what is happening around them. For them, their cell phones and their tablets and their gadgets are all of such great importance, and all the numerous social media sites are keeping them away from their coming to grips with what really is eating them. So what do you say about this?
The question is that whether young people are also feeling lonely. I think in ancient society, where young people were given a spiritual foundation. In India, for example, they were sent to a Gurukula ashram where they studied the scripture for 14 years. And also in Western Catholic Christian society, they've had something like catechism, where they study the scriptures for a certain number of years, or they go to a seminary. And likewise you have in the Islamic world, and definitely also in every other religion. Then I think when somebody comes into adolescence and then is on the threshold of adult life, I think there is a possibility of being more rooted and not being overwhelmed and not being swept off by the tornado of sensory distraction and sensory influx. Now we seem to live in a time when the sensory influx is enormous, very difficult to cope with. And one of the things it has done to us is to deprive us, especially the younger people, of a very tangible sense of self. Now, if you have a very tangible and rooted sense of self, then you will not experience that loneliness. You'll be very rooted within yourself. And the people who are creative in life, they are the people who are very rooted in themselves. And then the self expresses itself in work or in the act of living, even in the small acts of living. But when you are like a leaf in a storm, adrift as it were, and driven by the stormy weather of modern civilization, then I don't want to be offensive, but the individual, I mean, not in his body and in the physical space, but in consciousness country, in thought, consciousness, the sense of self is more like a vagabond, a homeless wanderer, running helter-skelter, in search of what? In search of a sense of self, which is to love and be loved. That's the sense of self. Yeah. And you don't have that love, and you don't know how to love, and you're begging for that love in all fleeting relationships. And the youth are afflicted by that.
But would that also not be, so coming to the first part of my question, when I talked about older people, so would you also say that they also don't have a tangible sense of self?
They had at some time in the past, when they were in the thick of their middle years and younger years, and then comes the inevitable storm in life, which gives a death threat to yourself. So part of the self is kind of ravaged by the vicissitudes of life. And then what happens? And then a part of the self is dead, actually, in the whole process of living. And then, so unless you turn inward as Krishnamurti says, and you want to understand fully the process and the importance of dying in life, which is an inseparable part from living, then you're not going to get that robust sense of self once again.
Dying in the sense of not physically dying.
Not physically dying, yes, psychologically dying. You learn that and you actually die a few times, then you will get that back and the loneliness will not be there. That's the real solution. But very few people want to go that far. They want superficial solutions which are phony, and those solutions are not durable.
So maybe that's the way they will get their elan vital and return back to normalcy.
Yes, of course. But they've got to do the hard work. Without that, they're not going to get it.
Get there.